Thank you for pressing start on episode 40 of Underplayed, KZUM's indie video game podcasts. Today we have 2 secret games, followed by a review of our featured game, UNSIGHTED. Here on Underplayed, we review indie games of all kinds, the games with small budgets but big hearts, the lesser-known experiences with imaginative ideas. I'm Bopo, and joining me is my player 2, playing games he wants to review. He's the Indiepedia with physical media. I'm talking about the stop pressing, secret game guessing, holding your controller, DiscoCola. What is going on?
Oh man, how long did you rehearse that? You're gonna run out of voices before you have to start rehearsing.
I will run out of voices before the end of season 4.
Okay.
And to answer your question, I did rehearse in the car ride over once, just once.
Well, anyways, to answer your question, I'm running on a couple hours of sleep and it's really hot, so my head is sort of spinning like a top. But good enough to get by.
Not the part I was expecting.
How are you doing, Bopo?
I'm doing just fine. My rapidly expiring automaton.
Ugh.
Those are references to our featured game, UNSIGHTED, which is a game that is very much a you game, right?
Yes.
Because you were anticipating it for so long.
Mm-hmm.
You were telling me about it for the longest time before it actually came out, and so I was aware of UNSIGHTED, I think way more than the average indie game player, just because of you. And now here it is. It's our featured game. So we'll talk about that later in the episode. But first, before we get to secret games, where we each review a game we've been playing on our own, we've got a bevy of topics here at Top of Show.
Yeah,
we've
apparently.
got so many things to talk about. Some of it has to do directly with us. Some of it does not. We're going to start with something that you saw on Twitter this past week, and it is talking about the difference between accessibility and approachability. And it does relate to us because we have commented on accessibility a lot in the past in ways that I think are accurate, and then in ways that we think are not so accurate and maybe misrepresentative of the space of approachability and accessibility. And so do you want to kind of talk about what you learned and saw?
Yeah, sure. So hopefully, if you're listening to this, you know that words matter, words carry weight. And we've sort of used accessibility interchangeably with a word that I hadn't really used myself called approachability. But accessibility is more of a specialized word. It's like when I say soda in an area of the world where everyone else says pop. Soda is the specialized word. So accessibility has literally everything to do with helping people with disabilities or are differently abled play a game. And we've sort of in the past used that as a way to talk about ways to make the game easier, just on a difficulty level. And that is not necessarily something that is accurate and not necessarily something that we even would have thought to consider without, being told. So I really appreciate that someone put that out there. And moving forward, I will do my best to use the correct terminology and had to intentionally change some of my notes for today to accommodate for that.
Yeah, and this individual is Steve Saylor, who I actually was already following on Twitter, but you saw his video first. And Steve Saylor is known as the Blind Gamer. And if you want to know how you can be blind and still be a gamer, he talks about it in depth on his YouTube channel, so you can look into that a little bit more. But Steve was actually talking about how he, as someone who's very much involved in talking about accessibility versus approachability, he was mixing up the terms. And so he was kind of apologizing while also making others aware that, hey, this is something that you should be mindful of when you're using these terms. And so I'm also going to vow to do better. I want you to correct me if you notice I'm misusing the 2 words. I think I'm just so used to saying accessibility that to then switch to approachability when just talking about more of the difficulty side is going to maybe be
take
hard.
Some time.
Yeah. So if I mess it up, I'm sorry. And then also kind of related to this, I think like the day before or maybe the day after this video came out, there's the senior director of Able Gamers, Steven Spahn, another great voice in this area. I saw a tweet from him saying that, quote, differently abled is a cutesy attempt to make people comfortable around people with disabilities. Just say disabled. It's not a curse word. It simply defines you have extra challenges to face, end quote. So I think that's helpful to hear. And there is sort of that caution around saying those words when you're not sure.
Mm-hmm.
And to hear it from that source is helpful for me personally. So anyway, it was a related topic to accessibility versus approachability. And we'll try to do better with that stuff. Next, I want to touch on a topic that I have just kept punting to the next episode and the next episode, and I'm finally going to talk about it. I'm going to talk about some of my favorite demos from the Steam Next Fest June
edition.
June 2023 edition. Steam Next Fest happens every February, June, and October. By the time this episode comes out, maybe
I think it'll be almost October.
Almost time for the next one, and then I'll be behind again. But, I'm addressing it at some point. I played 50 demos.
Oh my God.
For Steam Next Fest June edition. My goal was, I think, 40. And I actually was doubtful that I would find 40 that I would be interested in. It was high hopes. And then I started downloading demos, and I eventually found 50 demos total. And so this actually took up all of my free time for like a week was just playing these things. So I actually didn't work on Underplayed stuff at all. I didn't do any extracurricular things outside of work other than do Steam Next Fest for a week, which, is the spirit of the fest, is just trying all these things out. And I'd normally do my top 5. I'm going to do my top 6 because what would be my number 6 is so different than the other top 5. So I do want to mention, starting with number 6, one of my favorite demos I played was Luto, and this is spelled Luto. This is a first-person horror game about being trapped in a house with lots of really creepy scenes and sound design. And the fidelity of this game, the graphics are just really gorgeous, very detailed. Mm-hmm. It kind of reminds me of how it's like to walk in the house in What Remains of Edith Finch, but with even more detailed graphics. And it's obviously a horror game. It's like scary, whereas Edith Finch isn't necessarily scary. This game was so scary that I stopped playing after like 15 minutes. I was chilled to my core. I was so creeped out, and I felt that creepiness just seeping in the more I played. And as I'm talking about these, I'm sending you links to the Steam pages so you can kind of check them out.
That's one of our Halloween games in the future. I just know it.
I think it could be. Yeah, DiscoCola and I play a creepy game around Halloween every year with friends, and I think this would be just very horrific for a lot of people. I was creeped out. I've played a lot of horror things, and this one just unsettled me. The next one I want to talk about is Valley Peaks. This is a hard swing in the other direction. This is a cozy first-person adventure game where you're a frog and you're climbing mountains and you're running into other frogs, and everything is so cute. The color palette is just very, warm and inviting. The colors almost have a watercolor vibe with how they combine together. And you're just gaining momentum and launching yourself up mountainsides and just trying to reach the peak and set up transmitters and stuff. And it's so fun. I loved this.
All right. 2023 is the year of the frog. All right.
It is very accurate. Yes. We saw lots of frog games during the Summer Game Fest presentations. The next one is Goodbye Volcano High. This is a fully voice acted narrative game about dinosaurs at a high school, and the world's about to end, but also it's their senior year and they're trying to prioritize who to talk to, hang out with, have relationships with, and how to reconcile that with the end of the world. I found this to have very grounded conversations and very innovative storytelling, and it's a kind of game that's hard to get a demo for because you know that it's just hours and hours of these conversations that build up to something grander. And in a demo, you just don't get that journey. Some games just don't demo as well. But even though this was just a slice of this narrative experience, I cannot wait to play the rest of Goodbye Volcano High. My next one is Sea of Stars. This is a turn-based RPG adventure with some of the most beautiful pixel art I've seen. This is influenced by classic RPGs like Chrono Trigger and others. I played the whole demo. It was pretty lengthy, and I loved every minute of it. There are dragons. There's, great just fantasy elements to this. And you're in a party. You're doing turn-based combat, but you can react to attacks. So like if someone throws an attack at you, you can use that reaction like you could do in a Mario RPG type game, where you can react to attacks, reflect things. So it's actually more active than you might think. And so I had a lot of fun with that. My next one is Little Kitty, Big City. This is one that a lot of people know about. This is a sandbox exploration game where you're a black cat looking for a way home. And this is another game that reminds me of my cat at home, Flynn, who's a black cat. And so I am on board with this because it's about cats. It looks like my cat. You find tons of outfits. You do lots of scavenger hunt kind of things where characters will tell you to go somewhere and find something or do a certain number of a kind of task. And so it is just this playground that you're running around in, all while trying to find your way home. And lastly, it's Viewfinder. This was my favorite. This is my favorite demo.
You've been looking forward to this for a while.
This is my Unsighted DiscoCola. Viewfinder I've talked about several times on this show. They had the demo out at Steam Next Fest. Viewfinder is now out. So Steam Next Fest was right before the release of Viewfinder, and this was one of the top played games of the fest, and it's every bit as good as I expected based on the trailers. This is where you are taking pictures of the world and then using those pictures to create 3D scenes, to solve puzzles, and just the amount of ideas that are explored in this demo alone are very impressive, and it's only like a 10, 15-minute demo. And I still found it to be very absorbing. And so I cannot wait to play Viewfinder. Tons of people already have, I want to mention, and it has rave reviews. So I can't wait to get in there. I'm kind of waiting to see what kind of a splash it makes, because maybe it'll be featured game worthy.
I thought we already approved it for featured game, but
I don't think we did, but if you're good with it right in this moment, do you want to just go ahead and add it to the queue?
Okay. I assumed it was already on there.
Okay.
Honestly.
Well, I will add it to our master list later then. Awesome.
Okay.
Sweet. So that is a quick summary of some of my favorite demos I played for Steam Next Fest. Next, DiscoCola. Something very interesting happened on Twitch.
Bizarre, even.
Yes. And you noticed this. This is your story here. So take it away. What happened on Twitch? Actually, you could also just talk about what we do with Twitch with our episode premieres. And then what happened this past week when we premiered our Season 4, Episode 2 episode, Into the Breach.
Yeah. So every week when we have a new episode to put out, we put it out on Twitch as it's releasing on all the other platforms. This is just a way for us to actually utilize our Twitch channel when we're not playing a co-op game, but also have the ability to live chat with people who might have comments while listening to the episode. And while this one was airing this past week, we got a pretty significant raid from a notable channel called Giant Bomb, of all things, and that was pretty surprising for me, who was just like keeping an eye on chats while also like cleaning my office while this was all going on. And then I look over and all of a sudden there's hundreds of people in our chat room. Crazy to see that happen. So thank you, Giant Bomb, for rating us.
That was awesome.
I appreciate that you were able to find us. But also, if you're listening to this now, follow us on Twitch.
Yes.
We don't just premiere the episodes. Obviously, we'd love when people listen to us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or Google, because we can track those analytics much more easily. But if you want to chat with us while the episode is premiering on Twitch, or if you want to catch us when we're playing co-op games, we'd really appreciate a follow on Twitch. So check us out. Our channel is just Underplayed Podcast.
Yes, absolutely. And thank you so much for, monitoring that stream, interacting with the listeners. That is like a big thing you do, DiscoCola, and that meant a lot. That was awesome. And then another thing I wanted to talk about, this is on the heels of you meeting David Kay, which happened last time on the show. I had a chance to work with a voice actor who I didn't even know was involved with indie games, but is involved with indie games. And this was through my job. Through my job, I sometimes hire voiceover artists to record scripts. And I worked with this actor named Elena Wiss. We had 100 people audition for this thing.
Whoa.
And usually when we get that many auditions, I'll pick my top like 5 to 10 favorites. That's my short list, and I'll throw that short list over to my team, and they'll help me pick a final person. And so Elena was in my short list, and then my team picked Elena. We get to working with Elena. She's great. And then days later, after hiring her, I find out through seeing a post online, she is the voice of Evelyn from the new Oxenfree game, Oxenfree 2 Lost Signals.
Heyo.
And this is someone that I think the main character is talking to a lot. Like it's kind of one of the...
Okay,
I've watched on the walkie-talkie.
I've watched about an hour's worth of gameplay at this point.
Okay, so I think it's one of those characters that they're talking to on the side, but is a significant like part of the cast. And so that blew me away. And I actually told her like, hey, congratulations on Oxenfree. I saw that you were in that. And so she was appreciative about that. So just that was such a serendipitous thing. I totally didn't plan it. It just happened. It was crazy. So I'm just kind of still riding off the high of that excitement of working with Elena. So anyway, can't wait to play Oxenfree and Oxenfree 2 someday as featured games with you, DiscoCola. And hey, if you're enjoying Underplayed right now, please consider giving us a 5-star rating on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. It takes just a few seconds and goes a long way in showing your support of the show. Let us move on to our secret games.
Secret games. Secret games. Secret games. Secret games.
Secret Games is our segment where we each play a game in private. We don't know what the other person has played these past few weeks. And now we're sitting down in the same room. We're revealing what we've been playing to each other. And we also review the game that we played. So we will start with you, DiscoCola. Let the mystery be no more. Reveal your secret game for episode 40 of Underplayed.
Alrighty, my secret game comes from Inti Creates, and it's called Galgun.
No, it is not.
It is not.
Why? Now, why did you pick Galgun as the new inside joke? What's the significance? Is it just arbitrary?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just how we started with Wadham?
Yeah.
Kind of? Okay.
Yeah.
So it's not Galgun?
It's not Galgun.
Is it from Inti Creates?
It's not from Inti Creates.
I knew it. Okay. What is it?
My secret game comes from a studio called So Romantic, and it is called Jack Move.
Jack Move.
And I have just sent you that trailer.
I don't think I've ever heard of Jack Move.
All right. I will go on as you watch this trailer.
Yeah, no, I don't know jack about Jack Move.
Yeah, so as awesome as that trailer actually is, I don't think it actually does the game justice as far as what it is. So Jack Move is a pixel art JRPG that takes place in a cyberpunk future set more than a century from now, maybe 2. Is it still a JRPG if the dev team isn't from Japan, by the way? Or is that more of a style of RPG at this point?
I think we could do a whole podcast episode about this because I've read all these reports about quote unquote JRPG developers who don't like that they are sort of otherized by the term JRPG. It'd kind of be like if you put all RPGs made in America in a bucket and called them, ARPGs, which already stands for action RPGs. That's another thing. But a lot of developers don't like that, and they just want to be known as RPGs.
Okay.
That's a thing.
Interesting.
But I think the most accurate way to describe it is an RPG made in Japan, and so I don't know if JRPG is accurate if they're not from Japan.
Gotcha. Well, either way, the Steam page self-classifies as a JRPG.
Okay.
So moving
Fair.
forward in this review, I'm going to stick with that.
There's like the de facto version of JRPG, and then there's the de jure version of JRPG.
De jure.
I get it. I get it's confusing. I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyways, in the world of Jack Move, you play as a young woman named Noah Solaris, and she is a, quote, vigilante hacker. The world we see in Jack Move seems to feature an even greater income inequality than our current present. And at the core of this inequality is a megacorporation called Monomind. Doesn't sound sinister at all.
We've had tons of these bad corporations in games. We had Glug, we had Going Under, now Jack Move. There's probably another in our season.
It's not like it's a pressing problem at our point in history at all. Why would it be featured in so many games?
I don't know. It's not like these games are a reflection on our current society.
So, in addition to this super corporation, there is also an event that took place in 1997 where all of the net and technology just failed simultaneously, sort of like what we thought would happen with Y2K. Leave a 5-star review if you're too young to remember Y2K.
Exactly. And interesting that they said it like just a mere few years before
right?
Y2K. Like, what's the point? That's just arbitrary.
Just do Y2K.
Okay. Yeah.
At the start of our game, our character Noah is in the middle of infiltrating Monomind as a hacker for hire. And after a close call, she evades capture with the help of fellow hacker and partner, Ryder. We learn that Ryder has been friends with Noah for a good number of years. And we also learn that Ryder once had a partner who died within the past couple of years doing a job for the local mob. So that will play a role in sort of when Noah and Ryder talk about their history together. There's Ryder lost his lover. Apart from Ryder, we also receive a lot of assistance from Noah's uncle named Gwyn. He's the owner of the local bar and somehow employed by Monomind, but also at odds with Monomind. It's a very interesting relationship he has with Monomind there. And then not long into our story, we find Monomind in Noah's apartment and tearing the place apart. However, instead of like retribution for her hacking, they are actually searching for research of Abner, which is Noah's father. You see Monomind has Abner captive, and they think that Noah has the key to the missing part of Abner's research, but Noah hasn't spoken to or even wanted anything to do with Abner since the loss of her mother. And I'm guessing this is like 10 years or so amount of time. So as much as Noah hates her father, Uncle Gwyn talks Noah into rescuing him from Monomind. So with the assistance of Ryder, Uncle Gwyn, and an AI replica of Abner, you find clues and keys to reach the Monomind HQ and put an end to whatever nefarious plan Monomind has with Abner's research. On the gameplay side of things, as I mentioned, this is a JRPG of the random encounter variety. So like with any RPG, you have different stats and methods of attack. Though to fit the theme of the world, these stats and attack styles are sort of given a techno-centric names. So instead of words like maybe special attack and special defense, it's called grok and sass. And instead of magic and equipment, it's called software and hardware.
Interesting.
And then you also get the titular piece of gameplay elements, Jack Moves. These are special moves that you get to build up by dealing damage to your enemies over time. And then they just unleash an incredible amount of damage to the whole field. Apart from this, there's a bit of a rock, paper, scissors weakness system to the enemies. So attacks will have different types to accommodate. And there are status ailments that resemble poison or being stunned or having your stats debuffed. And, of course, as an RPG should have a good number of NPCs to talk to between story-based missions, some of which will give you small tasks to perform or give you just random item gifts. And that's Jack Move. So I want to get into it. What do I like about Jack Move? I actually should mention that JRPGs and RPGs in general is a genre that is very daunting to me.
Yeah.
Like, you're not as much of a completionist as I am, but we're still, I would say, both completionists.
Yes, I love doing as much as I can before getting frustrated or feel like my life is wasting away. And I know that you only like these kinds of RPGs if there's some kind of like property that you care about attached to them usually,
yeah.
right? Like
so
like a Digimon game.
It's got to be Digimon pretty much, or I'm not feeling good about it.
So this is a pretty courageous move for you to take here.
It was, yes. So why did I pick it? What do I like about this JRPG Jack Move? A lot.
Whoa.
I like a lot about this game.
Oh, nice.
But it's a lot of like the small things, though. It's not big overarching stuff. So in general, I like all of the characters, including a lot of the NPCs. Apart from Uncle Gwyn, I don't think there are too many like big standout characters that I absolutely adore. But I like the relationship that Noah has between her partner in crime, Ryder, and the relationship she has with her Uncle Gwyn. But even more than those, I love the way NPCs talk to Noah. Every time you talk to them, it implies a prior relationship. So if they live next door, the way the dialogue rolls out implies a prior relationship. But the way the dialogues are written doesn't make me feel like I'm missing any context.
Yeah.
Like they're not referencing something that Noah would know, but I can't know because I'm not actually Noah. The way everything is written provides everything that I need to understand the level and complexity of the relationship that Noah has with this NPC.
So it feels like authentic, but it's not doing an exposition dump.
Exactly.
Like, oh, hey, Noah, remember how this whole story started? I sure do.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
They're just referencing things that give you that context.
And some of it's like super mundane, but it still feels organic. I feel like I'm living Noah's life for a moment. And there's a lot of NPCs too that you can talk to. None of them like stick in my mind. Like I don't remember anyone's name, but I just really appreciate that. On top of that, in most JRPGs I've played, you sometimes have to talk to NPCs twice minimum to get the special item gift or get the quest. Those games train me to do that in every single game where I talk to an NPC. But in this game, there will be an icon above the NPC when they have nothing new to say.
Really?
And I want this in every game. If I turn off a game and I don't come back to it for a long time, I don't want to waste my time talking to every NPC again just to make sure I don't miss a quest or an item. Just because I don't remember who I haven't spoken to. And this happens a lot when I play Pokemon games. Because I'll turn off Pokemon games for months at a time. With Jack Move, that's not a concern, and I'm not going to miss any gifted item.
Yeah, that's quite unlike other games I've played, where I think the closest thing I've seen is there will be a little dot above somebody if they have something new to say, and then an exclamation point if they have a quest. I've seen like those two things in the same game. I've never seen an icon for this character has nothing new.
Yeah.
Is it like a cancel or an X or
it's like a weird little circle arrow.
Okay.
Like maybe just implying that they're going to repeat themselves.
Oh, I get that.
Maybe.
Okay, sure.
But I want this in every game from now on, always, forever.
Future games are now ruined because they won't have this.
You're not wrong. I waste so much time with this kind of stuff because I literally don't want to miss anything in games.
Yeah.
And this is such a treat. It's probably my favorite thing about the game, if I'm honest.
Oh, wow.
No, that's not true. Maybe it is. The pixel art in this game overall is exceptional and one of the main draws for me, apart from the really cool anime trailer. But the battle animations specifically are very beautifully crafted. The actual like characters don't tend to have a lot of elaborate frames of animation, but the attacks from bosses and especially the animations for the Jack moves are incredible. You got to see one of those in the trailer. It's like this purple tidal wave, and it just
Yeah.
consumes the screen, and it's so cool.
It is
looks
very
beautiful.
stylistic, and even just the animation to go into that is so cool. With her like being absorbed in the
Oh,
screen.
yeah.
Love that.
Yeah, very awesome stuff. The sound design in this game is also really great. The music plays plenty well on the radio, but it comes with a caveat. As with any sort of random encounter style RPG, you're going to hear the same songs over and over, but the sound effects are really satisfying. Selecting things on menus, opening doors, hitting your enemies with special moves, it's also satisfying every time. I love the sound effects in this game.
Nice.
Now, this one might just be more for me than others. I think the game holds your hand, and I'm sure it's too much for other people that enjoy this genre, but it was just the right amount of hand-holding for me. I was able to get the hang of most of the battle system by the time the game was done teaching me. I think the game's pace is really approachable. In the early part of the game, I was definitely starting to feel sort of untouchable, and I felt brave enough to explore beyond the bounds of like the next main story mission. But when I did that for the first time, I was very easily defeated, and that did teach me that I do need to level up, and that there are some difficult areas in the game. But when it was time to revisit this very same area for the main storyline, I was right where I needed to be to feel that sort of untouchable feeling again. This is the only time this happened too, and in addition to that, most of the areas that will be too much for you are off limits until you should be able to get there anyway. So, very, very approachable pace. And then perhaps most importantly in the likes column, this game's pretty short.
Nice.
JRPGs are very daunting, like I said. Every time I've started a new one, I've never, ever finished it to the level that I want to finish it. This isn't the case here. This game is short, there isn't much to complete, but it still feels like there was enough to do apart from the main story, and a lot of those tasks resolve along the way if you continue to talk to everyone you meet, and it just doesn't feel empty. Like, I feel like even though it's a short JRPG, I still got everything that I needed out of a game, and I would appreciate more RPGs that are short. So many of them just don't need to be so long.
Right. How many hours would you say you put in this?
I believe 8.
Okay, yeah.
And I'm completing pretty much everything. I'm not maxing my stats.
Wow.
But other than that, I completed pretty much everything.
Yeah, if you told me this was 20 hours long, I would probably believe you.
I
game.
think if I played it for 20 hours, maybe I would max out everything too. So,
Okay.
yeah, I very much appreciate short JRPGs. Love it. I would play more of them.
Yeah, I hear you.
So I've been overall pretty positive on this game, but there are dislikes that I have. First up, I wish that Noah could move maybe 30% faster. It's not terrible or anything, but just at times I can see exactly where I need to go on the screen, and I have to take kind of a winding path to get there. It just feels a little sluggish when I know exactly where I need to go, but I just can't. I can't get there any faster. And
I see a little bit of the movement in the trailer just for
Yeah.
a few seconds. Yeah,
So
I
just
get what
like
you mean.
just 30%, not a ton. Next, the software and hardware system is a little bit complicated for what it is. It sort of took me a while to get the hang of it, mostly because I have to install certain hardwares in order to increase my ability to equip more softwares, which, like, now that I'm saying it out loud, kind of makes sense with like how computers work.
Right.
But it did still take me a while. And like, oh, you need to install more RAM so that you can run more. But
Yeah.
anyways, it did take me a while to get the hang of it. And perhaps that's kind of a symptom of a bigger problem that I had with the game. And that is that the leaning into the computer and hacking and techno terminology for everything sort of adds an unnecessary layer of confusion for me.
Okay. Yeah.
So I don't know what each thing is. I have to look at the context of everything around that setting just to know what grok means, or
Sure.
what is this debuff. Oh, it's the same thing as poison, but it's called something
Gotcha.
else. So,
Yeah. So, like in the trailer, I'm paused on this frame right now where there's a software called Overclock, and I'm familiar with what that is in PC gaming. But then the description for it off to the side is Overclock the target deck processor. You know, like what is that?
Yeah.
What does that
to be
mean?
honest, I didn't use that one, so I still don't know.
Okay.
So just it adds a layer of confusion that I think is unnecessary. I appreciate that they had an identity they wanted to achieve.
Sure. Bunch of nerds.
But I just sometimes you just gotta just call it defense, man.
Sure.
Um,
Or call it, use your complicated code language, and then in parentheses say increased defense at the end.
Yeah, there's plenty of room on the screen for that too, in most cases. The weakness system is nice, but as far as I could tell, there's no good way to discern what type an enemy is just by looking at or fighting them. I did sort of start to see a suggestion that their primary coloring had something to do with it, but that also kind of seems imperfect. So I feel like I have to spend one of my software equip spots on the upgrade that automatically tells me what each enemy's battle type is.
Gotcha.
So I always kind of feel like one of my equip slots is wasted. And I guess if I play the game long enough and level up enough, I get to the point where weakness doesn't matter. But it feels like a waste to not have a good way to figure out what enemies are.
You're reminding me of Hollow Knight and needing to use one of my charms to just be able to use the map.
Yeah.
I don't like when I have all these slots for things and did you pay your taxes on this? Oh, I got to do this. Okay, yeah. That's basically what it feels like.
That's exactly what that's like. You're right. Lastly, and I guess this is more of a neutral complaint, the story isn't really treading any new ground for me. It's not bad by any means, but there's just nothing here that I haven't seen before. So no shade, and maybe this will be someone's first time with this kind of story. And I really hope so, because the game's overall pretty good. Jack Move is a game I bought because of a badass trailer, and it's a game in a genre I'm apprehensive about because of the sheer volume of game that is in a JRPG. There are a few things that didn't quite live up to the hype I had for this game, but in general, I am happy to report that this is probably my favorite non-Digimon JRPG, and I even like it more than some of the Digimon ones. It hasn't moved me into a camp where I'm dying to try more JRPGs, but it does show me what is possible, and I would love for the genre to look at this game as an example for quality of life fixes and ways to make more approachable JRPGs for wider audiences. I'm going to give Jack Move a 9.0 out of 10.
Wow. Wonderful, dude. That's awesome. So yeah, you talked about picking this game because it had an awesome trailer. I see the anime in this trailer. It looks very polished and good. Is there a lot of anime in the game?
Nope.
Oh, dang it.
Nope.
Okay.
Not you get your little pixel art icon
Sure.
characters above the dialogue screens.
Sure.
That's it.
Is this scene in the game from the trailer though?
It's an anime representation of the opening
It's
of
still
the game.
it's still very cool. The fact that they did it at all is just awesome and above what I would expect for any game like this of this size. How much in this game are you swapping the upgrades and doing the act of menuing? Like, are you going in there a lot to switch things around and experiment, or are you finding that you're getting really comfortable with stuff?
So you can. I didn't do it too much because once I discovered the weakness system, I sort of just leaned heavily on that. I tend to over level myself by 1 or 2 levels in these kinds of games anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So once I learned the weakness system, I just sort of equipped one of each type of attack and just sort of went for it. However, in battles, I'm doing a lot of menuing because sometimes things are cutting it close in battles, even when I'm over leveled and I still have to heal or put up a defense or something like that. So I am doing a decent amount of menuing in the battles themselves, but as far as in between battles and experiencing the pause menu, I didn't do too much of that, but I bet you could have an even better experience if you're someone that does like to experiment with that kind of stuff.
Sure. All right. Well, what is Jack Move playable on?
Ooh, Jack Move is playable on PS4, which is where I played it, Nintendo Switch, Windows, Mac OS, and Xbox One.
It is time for My Secret Game. Hey, this is Bopo talking to you after our recording of this episode, and I want to give a content warning about My Secret Game in which we mention the existence of sex. We do not go into explicit detail, but we thought it was worth mentioning, so just be aware of that and enjoy the review. My Secret Game is called Wide Ocean Big Jacket. I just sent you the trailer. Have you ever heard of Wide Ocean Big Jacket?
I want a girl with short.
No, that's not how the lyrics go.
No, I haven't heard of this. I'm so sorry.
No, that was good. I like that. So yeah, you can watch that while I talk. So Wide Ocean Big Jacket is a 2020 narrative game. It was developed by Turn Follow and published by Tender Claws. The game synopsis from the Steam storefront reads, quote, "A camping story starring Uncle Brad, Aunt Chloanne, Mord, and Ben." End quote. That's all it says. But then if you scroll down the page, you can read the About This Game section, which says, quote, "An aunt and uncle take their middle school niece and her boyfriend on an overnight camping trip in Wide Ocean Big Jacket. Take part in a classic camping trip, roast hot dogs on the fire, go bird watching, tell ghost stories, grab a beverage from the cooler, and do cartwheels on the beach. Wide Ocean Big Jacket is a short story game including 20 chapters, 4 playable characters, 10,000 words of dialogue, and 8 explorable areas, all rendered in a beautiful 2D/3D art style." End quote. So that tells you all you need right there. And it's too long of a description to put up in that synopsis. So I understand what they did there. But this game caught my attention because of the color palette and the cover art, which is really clean and bright. It looked like a joyful game, a cherry game. And so I picked it up, I think for not too much on the Steam store. And this has a graphical style that has you walking around in a 3D world, but there's less dimensionality to the characters, which makes it feel like this hybrid between 2D and 3D. It's really hard to explain. If you see the trailer, you kind of instantly understand what I'm talking about. But I encourage people to look at the trailer if they're curious. And this is a narrative game about family connection and adolescence and coming of age. And the story focuses on those 4 people. There's Mord and Ben. These are the middle schoolers who are dating. And then it's Mord's Aunt Chloanne and Uncle Brad who are taking them on this camping trip. And Chloanne and Brad don't have children of their own. And so what they've done is they've asked Chloanne's sister to have this camping trip and bring Mord and her boyfriend along so that they have this opportunity to reconnect with their niece because they haven't talked to her in a long time, like not since she was way younger as a kid. And so this story takes place over 24 hours or so from the moment they arrive at their campsite to the moment they leave. And so you're just seeing like basically one afternoon, one evening, and then one morning, and then that's it. Wide Ocean Big Jacket is mostly about reading dialogue between the characters while you're doing all those camping activities I mentioned from the Steam page. And when characters talk, you don't see them while they're talking. The screen transitions to a black screen with white text on top of that black screen. So you'll see the scene with the characters return once the conversation is finished. And then the game is very short. I think it could be finished in one sitting quite easily, and that's what I did with this game. So that's the setup. Very simple, very straightforward. This is one of my most straightforward secret games, and I think a lot of that has to do with just the length, that you're not playing this game for super long. It is a quick peek into these people's lives, and then you're done. And what I like foremost about this game is its vibe, which is really difficult to convey with words because you have to just learn how these people talk to each other by playing the game yourself. But each character has a distinct personality. Mord, the teenage girl, is outgoing and imaginative. Her boyfriend, Ben, is reserved and more intellectual. Chloanne and Brad are outdoorsy, and they are representative of a marriage that's on the younger side, which I feel like I haven't seen as often in games. When there's a married couple, usually it's like an older married couple, and these people don't feel like that. I enjoyed every character. Every conversation is this charming little moment of connection and humor. And I think the best way to describe it is to list some examples of scenes, like I've done with a few other secret games. So I'll just run down a quick hit list of like just dialogue moments. At night, they set up a campfire and they all want to tell a ghost story, but no one really is sure what they should say. And so Ben kind of feels pressured into saying something, and he just sort of word vomits this scary story that's called The Rats in the Sink. And it's this story about how he found a rat in his sink and he fed it. And then it came back next day with another rat, and then he fed those two rats.
Oh.
And then eventually there's just tons of rats in his sink. And by the end of his story, Chloanne and Brad are just like staring at him speechless, like wide-eyed, like, what the hell did we just let him do? Like, what was that? And they go, that had to be real because it was so, there were so many details in that had to be real.
Specific.
He's like, no, I made that up. So it's like, what the heck? Another funny little touch is you notice next to the campsite, there's this glow-in-the-dark skeleton just chilling out. And the kids are like, what is that? And the adults go, oh, that's glow bones. And they go, what's glow bones? Glow bones is a skeleton that the adults have brought with them on every camping trip, and it's to help them find the campsite at night. And so it's this tradition.
It's like a beacon. Yeah. Okay,
yeah,
cool.
it's this tradition. And so you as the player see glow bones and you go, what is that? Is that actually a skeleton? And then the kids themselves say, wait, what is that? And so I liked that my thoughts were being represented in that dialogue moment. And then there's a moment where Mord and Chloanne sit down at night and they end up having the talk.
Oof.
And Chloanne is a, childless woman, never expected to have this talk with her niece, totally expected her sister would be the one to give the talk. And so you've got Mord asking Chloanne questions like, is sex cool? You've had sex, right? Is that cool? and she's very much curious about her own relationship with Ben. And she's asking like, when should I have sex? Is it like better on Christmas or on my birthday? And it's like it's really funny, but it's also really real. And I was laughing at this dialogue in a lot of parts. And then in the morning, the grownups are kissing and the kids are grossed out by that. And then in response to that, the grownups just, they kiss more. And Mord says to Ben, like, hey, Ben, funny running into you here in hell. They're sarcastic, they're witty, they're sardonic. It's a lot of charming and quirky conversations going on in White Ocean Big Jacket. And there are conversations that have nuggets of wisdom and truth as well. There's a moment when Ben is ruminating on how camping is like living a more condensed version of your own life for just a moment. And he put into words something that I've kind of thought of before when I've camped, but never really put into words like that. And then Brad and Chloanne talk about their decision to not have kids when they're by themselves. And they talk about like how they came to that and their current feelings on that. And then Mord asks Ben at one point to call her honey, just to try something new. Because again, she's sort of thinking about her relationship and thinking about, are they doing the relationship things that people in a relationship should be doing? And so they try out the word honey on each other. And so that's nice. And so this game strikes this balance between silly talk and real talk that I really appreciated. And that's really all I can comment on with this game when it comes to likes, because it is about those conversations. And what didn't work for me so well in this game is just that it is very brief. And this is kind of a backdoor compliment because I want to spend more time with these characters now. After now finishing the game, it's a heartbreaker because by the time I feel like I am getting to know these people, it's time to say goodbye to them and never see them again. I could replay the game, but I won't learn anything more about them really. And so I just wish the game was longer. It's that rare critique where I want to play more of this game. So the short length also, just by the nature of being like an hour long, it doesn't allow for the game to make a super memorable impression, I think, in the long term. I am still thinking about this game now because I played it recently. I think in like 2 months, this game won't really be in my mind anymore. And it's kind of sad to think about that, but it's kind of like another Pilgrims situation.
Yeah.
Where Pilgrims was a game that I liked in the moment I played, but it's so brief and inconsequential that I'm not going to really think about it beyond that. I think this game is a little bit more consequential because it has things to say. Pilgrims didn't have a ton to say other than giving you a fun activity. And then reading the text on screen is the main activity of the game, but you don't see the characters while it happens. It's transitioning to that black screen with the white text. And that presentation is just kind of largely unexciting. They do things with the text, like they will italicize text. They will make certain lines title casing where every word is capitalized. And that carries a different weight. But on the whole, it's just not as interesting to me as like seeing the characters while they're talking. So that's it for all my likes and dislikes.
Everything.
That's it. So Wide Ocean Big Jacket, I think it's a joyful yet fleeting experience. There is a certain je ne sais quoi in this game about coming of age and togetherness that I really liked. The act of reading is a bit stiff, but the words still made me laugh and reflect on life for a short moment. So I'm going to rate it a 7 out of 10.
Nice.
And it's playable on PC, Nintendo Switch, and iOS.
Okay, I don't have many questions, but I do have one and then one comment. My question is, in a lot of games like this that are sort of narrative, when you enter the story, your characters are leaving as someone different or have changed in some way. Is there a bit of a progression here, or is it like any camping trip I've gone on where I just didn't sleep and then I go home?
It's funny you say that because in the morning, I think Chloanne asks Mord, how'd you sleep? And she says, my bones hurt, which I totally identify with. But I think these characters do go through a little bit of an arc. It's just not very overt. It's way subtler than a lot of other narrative games. And because this game is just so short, there isn't time to go through a massive arc. But I think with the kids, a lot of it is them experimenting with things to try out in their relationship and being curious about what a relationship should be. And then with the adults, it is reflecting on the decisions they've made up to this point, and then just trying to provide a good experience for the kids. And so it is wholesome. It is kind of straying that line between just being a vibe and being a story where characters see development. So it's a balance, I think.
Yeah, and then immediately when I first started watching the trailer, the first game I thought of was Mutazione. And oh, hey, look at that. It's actually a recommended video at the end of the
Oh, that's funny.
the end of the trailer.
That's good.
Yeah, that's it. Looks like Mutazione and kind of sounds like it is a Coke Zero version of what you get out of Mutazione or something.
Yeah, for sure. It has that same kind of look to it. Just a quirkier style with less shapes and colors, but the colors and shapes that are there definitely do the job. I think this game works really well for a rainy night in, or if you just want to decompress after a very busy day, or if you don't have a lot of time.
Yeah, just a short 2-hour session.
Especially like after playing something really long. Yeah. Maybe combat action oriented and you want to just decompress, play Wide Ocean Big Jacket. That's my recommendation.
Excellent. 7.0. Got it down. Thank you so much, Bopo.
Those are our secret games, Jack Move and Wide Ocean Big Jacket. Let's move on to our review of UNSIGHTED. It is our featured game. UNSIGHTED is a 2021 Metroidvania. It was developed by Studio Pixel Punk, which from what I understand is primarily two people who I think you've been following for a long time.
Yeah.
It is Tiani Pixel and Fernanda Diaz.
That's as far as I know.
and it was published by Humble Games. The game synopsis from the Steam storefront reads, quote, "Explore your way. Awoken to a world ruined by war, Alma must traverse the vast city of Arcadia before the life force of her friends and herself withers away. Time is ticking, and every moment matters. Who will you save, and who will you leave to turn unsighted?" End quote. So Unsighted is a top-down Metroidvania in a sci-fi setting. It takes place in a city called Arcadia, which is embroiled in this war between humans and machines. And in so many of these stories where humans are fighting the machines are bad. In Unsighted, the humans are bad. humans not good for the most part. There are some good humans, but the humans that are attacking Arcadia are obviously bad. So we like the machines in this game. We play as the machines.
Go Robo.
Exactly. You play as Alma, who's an automaton, which is a humanoid machine. And Alma wakes up in a lab facility suffering from amnesia. And you find a diary that talks about Alma and another automaton named Raquel. And slowly, Alma's memories start returning, and she knows she must find Raquel, who is her predecessor and her lover, as it turns out. So this game has an openly queer love story, which we're all about. Love to see that representation. And the background on all of this, Alma waking up without any memories, there's this war going on. How did we get here? How that happened was a meteor crashed into Arcadia years before the beginning of the game. And this meteor has this energy called anima. And the anima emanating from the meteor gave all of the machines in the world sentience. And because of this, a lot of humans were scared of this. They left the city. Some of them stayed behind, but most left. And the machines ended up building their own society in their stead. And some bad humans then attacked Arcadia.
Some naughty boys and girls.
They wanted to attack Arcadia to harness the power of the meteor and take it for themselves. And they built this huge structure over it called the Crater Tower. And in all this chaos, Alma and Raquel got lost and separated. And after the humans built the Crater Tower, the remaining automatons, they started to lose their anima. They started to lose their consciousness. And when they completely run out, they turn hostile. And another term that we use for this is unsighted. That's where we get the name for this game. Also coming from the Crater Tower are these large hulking monsters called shadow creatures. And they kind of remind me of the anomalies from Solar Ash.
Yeah, dude.
Because they're big, hulking black creatures.
Made of eyeballs.
Eyeballs all over their bodies.
Yeah.
And so I saw the parallel there immediately. And you fight them every so often in this game. And then Alma finds automatons who are surviving. A lot of them are machines she already knows. But one of them is called Vanna, and Vanna helps Alma remember what's going on. And she gives Alma a solution to stopping the humans and finding Raquel. And that solution is that Alma and Raquel's creator, Dr. Zephyrina, had previously taken 5 shards from the meteor and spread them to automatons she trusted. And if needed, these shards could be combined into a weapon to defeat the humans. But because the shards are in the possession of automatons, it's very likely they've turned unsighted. And so Alma has to track down the 5 meteor shards spread across 5 large areas of Arcadia to stop the humans from abusing the meteor, prevent the automatons from going unsighted, and to reunite with Raquel. And so this is where we get to how the game works, the gameplay. And I was wondering if you could help me with this part.
Sure, I'm going to do my best. So as Alma, your primary moves will be to run, climb, jump, dodge roll, swing your sword, or use your gun. And additionally, you have a stamina meter, which will decline for nearly every single action that you take related to that. This does recharge over time, and it punishes you if you let it run out. Alma can also equip a variety of different kinds of weapons, such as axes, blades, grenade launchers. And you can equip one weapon for your left hand and one weapon for your right, which essentially in practice just means that you get to have 2 different weapons at any given time. You just press a different button for each one. Over time, as you progress and defeat bosses, you also gain access to more kinds of mobility options, including a grappling gun and a spinning top. And so this is where your Metroidvania equipment comes in, and these will allow you to traverse different kinds of obstacles. Now, perhaps the most unique element at play in Unsighted is something that we've mentioned already, is time. Everyone in this world is an automaton, and they only have so much time on their side before they become unsighted. And you can add more time to any automaton of your choice, including yourself, by using something called meteor dust. But meteor dust is precious. That's a precious item. You don't get to run into too much of it. And,
and it's spread thin.
Yeah.
Like you don't get a ton of it at once. So the more you play, the more dust you get, but that's more time that the robots are, wasting away.
Yep. And so that can force you to make some very difficult decisions at times. One of the biggest mechanics working in your favor is a parry move. When you time your parry move just right, it can stun your enemy and force them to take an incredible amount of damage. Parrying is your friend, and the most technically challenging thing to master, in my opinion. Okay, so like I said, these new mobility options that you get and weapons, certain weapon types, will help you traverse different obstacles. This is where the Metroidvania comes in. However, the thing that makes it stand out from other Metroidvanias is this is more of a top-down game instead of like a side-scrolling, which is what I think of when I think of Metroidvanias.
Mm-hmm.
So it's unique in that sense, but just like these different mobility moves, like other Metroidvanias, there are several obstacles that can only be opened with specific weapons, moves, or keys.
Yeah, it's got the same perspective as a lot of classic Zelda games, and I know Zelda is an influence on Studio Pixelpunk for this game.
The world also features different kinds of terrains, and the entire map is interconnected, and reaching certain points in the game will allow you to open up shortcuts to get from newly discovered areas to older ones more easily. And I know that's your jam, Bofo.
Love that.
You love
that.
shortcuts.
Yes, there are lots of them in this game. Yes.
And that's gameplay and mechanics. Is there something else that you feel like I left out, Popo?
The game encourages you to sequence break if you discover that on your own, but it's also not mandatory. So that's why the game, says explore your way in that Steam description. So there are certain instances where you can get to some places faster. And then did you mention cogs?
I didn't mention cogs. Thank you. There's cogs and chips. So cogs you can build using materials that you find throughout the world or from enemy drops. And cogs are sort of short-term passive buffs. So you can have an attack cog or a defense cog. And so when you equip an attack cog, your next 20 hits will have extremely boosted offensive power.
Yeah, they will.
And then chips are sort of permanent buffs, but you can only equip so much based on how many chip slots you've unlocked.
Yeah, a lot of the same ideas as Jack Move that you were talking about.
Absolutely.
Right.
And so there's stuff like stamina chips that will increase the amount of stamina you can use before your bar is completely depleted, or ones that boost your attack, or ones that give you a spin attack. So there's plenty of chips to choose from, and those are permanently equipped.
Yes. And you mentioned it briefly, but like you can get drops from enemies. Enemies will drop materials you can craft with, and you can find blueprints for things. You can craft tons of things in this game, including the chips and the cogs. So Polygon, who's a notable video game journalism outlet, called Unsighted one of the best games of 2021. And DiscoCola, it's no secret between us that this game was highly interesting to you for a long time before it released. And you even twisted my arm a little bit to vet it as a featured game.
Yeah.
To put it on our master list.
I held something hostage.
Right, which I don't get that concept because I just see all games as like separate. I don't see like a this for that thing going on, but how did you find out about this game?
That's
then
such a great question, man.
I'm so curious about this because I knew about all the updates, but where did it begin for you?
I have no idea.
Really?
I saw something on someone retweeted it on Twitter.
Okay.
And then I followed Tiani Pixel from there, and every update she had, I was just like, this looks incredible. I want to play this game so bad.
I didn't think this could look cooler, and now it looks cooler. Yeah, I remember all
just
those sentiments.
Every single update she posted, I was just like, oh my God, this looks so cool. Because this was, I think, even before we started Underplayed. I was keeping up with this.
I think it was, yeah.
And so, like, one of my favorite games at that particular time was Hyper Light Drifter, and it still is.
Right.
And this has a lot of, like, visual flair, very similar to Hyper Light Drifter. You're just mobile in different ways.
And there's a Hyper Light Drifter reference in this game. Did you catch it?
I didn't know.
There's a chip that you can find called the Drifter chip. And when you slot it in, it lets you reload your gun with melee hits.
I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah, dude. So
I love that.
They're very much aware of how similar this game is to Hyper Light Drifter, and they're even inspired by Hyper Light Drifter, along with tons of other games, I think. Yeah, so now DiscoCola, I'm very curious. What are your thoughts on this highly anticipated game, Unsighted?
Okay. Unsighted, a game that I've been looking forward to for so long. I bought it the day it came out, and I didn't get a chance to play it because at that point we had started Underplayed, and I was very busy. But I am happy to tell you that I do like most of Unsighted.
Nice.
So moving right into likes, the main draw for me before purchasing the game, the pixel art and visual appearance lives up to the hype. I love looking at Unsighted. I love playing it. I love when you activate a terminal and the things disappear and the way that the pixel art sort of fades away after a bright flash. I love enemies glowing red before they're about to attack you and that signifying you to parry them. I love all of the enemy designs. I love the world. Everything looks so cool. It's so full of life. I know that there are repeated pixelated elements, but other than just like platforms themselves, just the vastness of the forests, they all look like unique pixels at any given time.
Mm-hmm.
I know that so much care went into the visuals. So even if this game was just like hot garbage, that on its own is worth 2.5 points to me, probably just visually. The music is good to great. I don't think there's a bad song that I heard the whole time. Definitely all plays really well on the radio. In addition to that, the sound effects are all really satisfying, just like Jack Move, and sort of happen in all of the same points that you get sound effects in Jack Move. So very awesome sound design. I love most of the mobility upgrades. I really love getting the top because that's just like
what a fun upgrade.
You're just zooming.
Yeah, I know.
You're just going for it, man.
Yes.
It can be a little unruly to control in tight corridors, but worth it, man, because it's dealing damage. You're going super fast.
It breaks pillars.
And you were already Alma's already pretty fast anyway.
And it also offers an advanced maneuver to skip over water.
Ooh, yeah, I didn't experiment that.
Right.
But I know about it.
I saw the trophy for it, and so I had to experiment till I got it. And if you're really skilled with it, it's kind of like Celeste, where it offers this advanced maneuver where it's totally optional, but if you can master it, it makes certain areas just completely different.
Yeah.
Because you're just zooming through.
You can skip a lot of stuff too if you're doing that, I'm sure. Because I remember water being a big obstacle for me playing at vanilla.
Definitely.
So yeah, that and then getting 2 grapple guns was very satisfying and really just opened the world up for me. I love the mobility upgrades here and just controlling it in the first place. Controlling Alma feels so good.
Mm-hmm.
I love running. I love roll dodging. I love jumping. I love, slashing my sword. It all feels so great.
And she looks awesome doing it all.
Yeah, of course, because all of the pixel animations in this game are incredible. Tiani nailed it. I really love all of the boss designs. There's not a bad one in the bunch, I don't think. I think my least favorite one is actually the the first one you're supposed to fight.
The three masks.
No, I do
Okay.
like that one.
Oh.
It's not the one I'm thinking. It has kind of like a bird head. No, that's not the same one. The dark area boss.
Oh.
That one's probably my least favorite.
Gotcha. Okay.
But I really like all the boss designs. There's even like basically a Gundam boss essentially at one point. Super cool stuff. The structure of progression is something that I really love about this game. And what I mean by that is that you have your 5 points on the map that you need to go to defeat the bosses. This is very Hyper Light Drifter. You know where your 3 bosses are that you need to go defeat in order to unlock the terminals. But as you go to each zone, it's very clear like where you need to go based on your abilities. But also once you defeat this boss, you get a mobility upgrade. The mobility upgrade isn't like a Metroid game where it's hidden under a breakable wall or you have to go off the beaten path from a boss to find it. It's very beat the boss, and that's how you essentially get the upgrade.
Yeah,
or
it's
at
immediate.
least it's on the way if nothing else. So it's very streamlined in that way.
Yes.
And reminds me a little bit more of a Mega Man. Like you get this upgrade from the boss or by getting to the boss, and now you can explore new zones.
And that's exactly the way you want it in a game where time is ticking and you need to be mindful of time. Like to get that little shortcut to the thing is just really appreciated because it keeps you focused on what you want to go chase.
And you always get to use them right away after you acquire them. It puts you in a room where like, okay, try it out. And when you try it out, you get to go to a new zone because the obstacle for this item is right here.
Yes.
Try it. Love that. And then there's approachability options in this game that allow a lot of different people to play this game how they want. And so as I was playing this, I was getting very daunted by the time ticking away on myself and all of my comrades. And you have the option to turn off that death clock. You can.
It's called Explorer mode.
You can turn on Explorer mode. I ultimately didn't do that because I wanted to, at least the first time I play it, experience the full devastation of my inaction, essentially. But I appreciate that that's there because I'm someone that loves to explore. I want to find all the treasure chests. And so I really appreciate that Studio Pixelpunk knew that they made a hard game, and that was their goal, was to make a challenging game, just like Hyper Light Drifter is challenging. But they allowed people that don't necessarily want all of the levels of challenge to play this game and still enjoy themselves.
Yeah, totally agree.
So love that is an option. I didn't use it yet, but I appreciate that it's there. Unsighted, probably my most anticipated game of all time. I do have some dislikes with it. At times, I got lost. There are some sort of like puzzle elements, particularly in that like upper elevation zone, like the highway?
Highway, yeah.
That got complicated compared to the rest of the game.
So is it not knowing where to go on the map, or is it that you get to a puzzle you can't figure out?
So both, but at different times. So in the highway, it's like I get to a puzzle I can't figure out. But additionally, if I die, which I'm doing a lot, especially in the highway zone, once I figure out this puzzle that sort of like stumped me for a little bit, there isn't anything complicated about it, but there are a few of these puzzles that I wish would just like stay solved or just turn off altogether once I've done them the first time.
I hear you.
There are a lot that do that, but there are also some that don't. And so maybe your respawn point is like 6 or 7 screens away from where you just died and where you need to go. So you're having to do all of these puzzle triggers each time you die. And it's a huge drag, and it feels like it's wasting my time.
Yeah.
Not as bad as Chicory when we mentioned it, but Elevation can be a little hard to discern at times in this game.
It's so funny that we had these back to back.
It's not as bad as Chicory, but there were times when I felt like I was jumping toward a platform and I was actually like miles above it.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
There is a big tell with parrying that I mentioned. Your enemy will glow red. But the timing between that glowing red tell and the actual moment of parry execution isn't necessarily consistent between enemy types.
Yes, I noticed this too. And it's one of those criticisms I didn't write down, but I noticed that, you kind of have to not only look for that red flash, you have to memorize the timing between the red flash and the attack for almost every enemy.
Exactly. Yeah. So it becomes at times less a mastery of parrying and more a memorization of what each enemy type does.
And for me, I don't know if this is how you helped to make this easier, but I almost, instead of memorizing each one, I just kind of categorized in my mind, is this a fast attack enemy or is it a slow attack enemy?
I did that a little bit.
You know, and I kind of just tried to remember, does it belong in camp A or B?
And then there were some that I sort of categorized in don't even try. Just wait for a different, some bosses. I'm just like, don't even try to parry when they do this tell. Do it later.
Yes.
And on more than one occasion, on more than a dozen occasions, I got totally overwhelmed with minor enemies. If you get 3 or more on a screen at a time, it can get dangerous pretty quickly, and this game is designed to prevent you from having to dodge more than one attack at a given moment, but it could get difficult to time your parries in the correct direction against so many enemies that will attack in a random order.
Yeah.
So if there's 4 people on a screen at a time, but one of them has like 2 moves before their parry tell, maybe they'll go once and then another enemy will go 2 times and then enemy 3 will go once and then the first enemy will go and do the parry tell. You just have to like really be on your toes.
Yeah, the thing that can get you out of that situation is just trying to lead one away from the pack.
That's what I did a lot.
You don't always have the most room to work with. And yeah, there were moments that were reminding me of a very specific criticism I had in Raji and Ancient Epic, where I just get in this cycle of enemy 1 hits me, now enemy 2 hits me, now enemy 3 hits me, and now it's time for enemy 1 to hit me again. And so I have to get away and I have to try to shuffle them up so that they stop doing that.
Yeah. There's another enemy type that also like creates clones of itself too. And that just compounded the difficulty. I died so many times just in like small encounters with that enemy involved. Okay. I bought Unsighted day 1 to scratch the itch of something like a Hyperlight Drifter. It does live up to a lot of the things about Hyperlight Drifter that I loved. It doesn't quite unseat Hyperlight Drifter, of course. I think when I play this again, and I will play this again, I would turn on exploration mode just once, just so I can explore this attractive and fun world, learn where all the secrets are, and just really take all of that in. I am daunted by difficulty in standard mode, and it makes me a bit nervous about trying many of the trophy challenges that I have left.
Yeah, you're in for a rough ride.
But for a game that is made almost entirely by a team of 2 people, I am still super impressed with the final product. And even Tiani has been posting more and more work for an upcoming low poly project.
Ooh.
And it looks heckin' incredible. Despite getting my ass kicked, I am satisfied with Unsighted. I give Unsighted a 9.0 out of 10.
Wow. The streak is broken.
It is. I broke it.
Dang it. On 8s for our featured game.
Well, is that a spoiler for your score?
Maybe. Unsighted for me is unlike any other Metroidvania I've played. And the more I played this game, the more I did enjoy it. There were the first few hours where I was like, this is a DiscoCola game. This isn't a Bopo game.
Yeah.
You know, and
I think you even texted me. You were like,
that's the fact.
I'm having trouble, man.
I did message you at one point about the time aspect, which we can kind of get into. I'll get into that in a little bit. I had a lot of questions and concerns surrounding that impacted how I played. I'll get to that in a moment. What I liked about Unsighted, never has a Metroidvania, nor most games I've played, given me this feeling of urgency. And even though urgency isn't something I want to always experience when I'm doing an escapist activity like playing games, even though that's not like something that's inherently pleasurable for me, the fact that the game made me feel urgency, like it changed my attitude in a way I didn't expect it to, was very powerful for me. And I'm very impressed by the fact that it did cause that urgency in me. In this game, I have a to-do list. You know, there's like getting the 5 meteor shards, and then there's tons of side activities and like kind of quests and things to collect. And there's this part of the map I haven't discovered yet. Should I go down in that corner? And I feel this pressure to prioritize it. And I think it works really well in this game with that prioritization because the side tasks always feel rewarding. If this game was linear, if this game was go to point A, B, C, D, and then E, and then you finish the game, the time aspect wouldn't carry as much weight because it would be more about how fast can you speed run this experience that we have choreographed for you versus, hey, here's the main path to get through the game, but you're going to be really enticed to do all this side stuff. And so what is your balance going to be for the side stuff versus the main path stuff? And so that's what makes the to-do list so interesting. And so I just applaud the side activities that make that balance really hard to figure out and a challenge. The consequences for keeping certain automatons alive feels really substantial. So this time aspect wouldn't really mean a whole lot if there weren't great conversations to have and if you didn't get good rewards for giving the meteor dust. And there's an example of the dialogue stuff that you might miss out on from Iris, who's this fairy bot who accompanies you. Iris is on a timer and has less time remaining than Alma does at the beginning of the game.
Yeah.
If you don't give Iris meteor dust, you're going to miss out on a lot of dialogue when you enter a new area. Iris was giving me background info on things that I wouldn't have known about. And so I appreciated that. So, I was given Iris meteor dust because I want to keep Iris alive. I don't want to miss something important from this character.
Yeah, I missed a lot, I think.
Yeah. And I feel highly encouraged to discover sequence breaks too and, find my own path in Unsighted. It didn't happen a whole lot where I was finding this secret path that 99% of other players won't find. But I love the idea of explore your own way. It's a refreshing feeling. There's this instance I had where I ran into those stone pillars that are cracked that you have to use the top on. That's where you learn that those can be broken and that's how you break them. But I tried my grenade launcher that I found hours before my top on those and it broke them. And I was able to go into this new area that I wouldn't have been able to otherwise. And here's the thing, I didn't know that I was sequence breaking at the time and it was still seamless for me in that particular moment. But there are dozens of other moments that you might realize, hey, I know I am sequence breaking the game and that is okay. It's all valid. And so I love that open-endedness that every playthrough can be a little bit different. And there are tons of instances of this with the elemental weapons that I didn't try out, but I know that are just there in the game, and I just admire that. The map is very helpful. I always knew where to go. If I got stuck, it was because I was on a puzzle on one screen I couldn't figure out, not because I didn't know where to go in the map. The map drops those little waypoints. Characters will talk to you, and they'll say, I think you should do this first. Or they'll say I know you could do this, this, or this. My recommendation is that you do this. It felt like there was a little guide in the game helping me. Love that in Unsighted.
And if I may jump in here, something I forgot about entirely, in addition to that map, where your open-ended doorways are on the map is in itself a good guide of where to go. And that's how I would at times figure out where I wanted to go next, was which doorways do not have another room attached to it at this point on the map.
Exactly. Yeah. I was doing that every time I was getting a new meteor shard and then trying to figure out my next path.
And that opened up a lot of progress for me.
And I love the variety with each of the areas that have a meteor shard. Each one has you experimenting with different gameplay ideas. Even though I don't always love traversing the ice and the aquarium, that's so much different than the mine carts and the highway puzzles. Every single area, it's not like a rinse and repeat of the same ideas. They all have their own identity in both visuals and in gameplay mechanics. Parrying attacks feels powerful when you hit the right flow of blocking at the right time. The finale is epic and continues to evolve in feeling and even genre beyond what comes before it. So I was just surprised by what the ending, the finale, the last hour of this game looked and felt like. The music I thought was a great blend of electronic and rock and jazz.
Yeah,
I
there's
didn't expect it.
some cool jazz going on.
Yeah,
in
some
there,
great
too.
piano in here.
Boom, boom, boom.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
Bring, ding, ding.
Exactly.
ding,
You
ding.
knew.
And that I love that you can rescue dogs and take care of them and that they fight next to you. And yes, you can pet them. You can pet the dogs.
You can petthedog.com.
In Unsighted. So I love that. And now on to what didn't click so well for me. My biggest complaint with this game is actually the control scheme.
Interesting.
I thought the controls in this game were very hard to learn and master. I could not get the controls like cemented in my mind in the 10 or so hours I played this. I couldn't find a way to change button layouts, but on PlayStation, the triggers are the weapons, square is run, circle is parry, L1 heals with your syringes, and then R1 reloads your gun. And I just kept mixing up all the buttons. I'd be in the middle of combats and I would forget like, oh wait, does R1 reload my gun? Oh, I got hit, I died. You know, I got caught with my pants down because I just couldn't learn a lot of this stuff. And a lot of it is a me problem, but I also feel like the layout of the buttons is unlike what I've seen in a lot of games that are top down like this. I kept wanting to use square to do melee attacks. And I think a lot of it has to do with my Zelda brain. Because this game looks like Zelda and I'm so used to using, you know, like Y on the Nintendo controller to attack and stuff like that. So I think it's coming off of like playing A Link Between Worlds earlier this year and having just now played over 100 hours in Tears of the Kingdom and other 2D games I've played recently where I just didn't think the triggers for the buttons were intuitive. Yeah, I wish they had been.
And maybe it's more open-ended that way. Well, I guess it's not open-ended, but maybe it's mapped to the triggers because you don't necessarily have to have a melee weapon equipped at a time.
Yeah. So yeah, I do like that there's the freedom of you can use any two weapons. That's awesome. But I did think that swapping weapons was clumsy. You know, for me, I used the D-pad to switch between loadouts. And there are so many weapons that you want to use, or at least I wanted to keep switching between, that just 3 loadouts didn't do it for me, where each loadout has 2 weapons, so I can only hold 6 weapons. And I found myself, by the end of the game, I had grapple hooks, I had ice shuriken, I had grenade launchers and swords and axes, and I wanted to use all this stuff. But it meant that I would sometimes have to pause the game and reassign my loadouts. And then when I go back into the game, I have to relearn which loadouts are which, and I'm switching between loadout A, B, C. And that is a clumsy, fumbly activity for me in the middle of a combat situation. So I kind of wish this game had a weapon selection wheel and that time paused when I'm holding down that weapon selection wheel, honestly. I think that's what would work best for me. I understand that that's not necessarily the philosophy of the developers, but I just didn't like the loadout stuff. The default walking speed, I think, is a little too slow. I just kind of wish we ran all the time in Unsighted. It was difficult for me to discern the terrain heights like we had in Chicory and like you said already. And then lastly, for dislikes, I ran really short on hours while looking for my 4th meteor shard. And I ended up having to turn Explorer mode on. So I do have the experience of using Explorer mode, but I played most of the game in standard mode. So I got that stressful experience, which is the experience I wanted. I wanted to be challenged by this game, but I think I ran out of all possibilities to extend that time because I just had no concept of how long each shard would take to collect. I spent over 100 hours getting my first meteor shard, which
in-game hours, not
in
real life hours.
Right.
Okay.
Right. In-game hours. So just for context, an in-game hour, I think, is like 60 seconds, I want to say.
Something.
So like a minute or a second equals a minute. You know what I mean? I think that's the math. It might be slightly different than that. But I spent 100 in-game hours looking for Meteor Shard 1. Almost starts with somewhere between 300 and 400 hours left before she becomes unsighted. So now I'm down to like 250 hours left and I still have 4 shards left. And I go, oh no, what am I? And that's when I messaged you and I go, am I screwed, basically? And of course, I gave myself meteor dust. I helped extend that time. But with each successive shard, I'm spending more time. The aquarium took me so much time. The highways took me so much time. And so by the time I got to looking for that 4th one, I had like 90 hours left, which is still quite a lot of time. But I just go, you know what? This is a good stopping point on standard mode. I'm going to turn on explorer mode. And so that's what I did. And so my criticism here is not necessarily that I had to use explorer mode. It's just that I had no concept of how much time each shard would take. And I just wish there was a little more insight into that. But I also understand that's not part of the philosophy of the challenge. It's just like, maybe I did too many side things, but I feel like I was mainlining quite a lot too. So I don't know. Overall, Unsighted has a ticking clock that synergizes really well with its story. The lengthy levels make it hard to plan that most precious resource of mine, which is time. But along the way, I'm loving the character designs, the storytelling, how powerful it feels to parry enemies perfectly. I did not usually enjoy the control layout for this game, and that is a big thing for me. But Unsighted is nonetheless unlike anything else I've played, certainly from the past 3 or so years since it released. I give it an 8 out of 10.
I'm sorry I broke the streak.
Dang it, DiscoCola.
Oh, well.
So there you go. I'm largely very positive on it.
I'm glad.
Well, there's like also,
I wasn't sure.
There's a lot to comment on.
Yeah.
So I had a lot of likes. I had a lot of dislikes, but overall it's a very positive experience for me. What big decisions did you have to make regarding time? And how did this whole time mechanic affect your habits while you're playing?
Yeah. So I did a lot of dying. I died a lot in this game.
Sure.
And eventually, I don't even remember getting the invitation from M, but I could tell that defeating her would mean something good for time and death for a lot of people. So I actually sunk a lot of time into trying to defeat her.
Interesting.
Which
So she's hard.
Oh, very, yes.
Yeah.
Well, yes.
Okay.
Yes, but no, but yes.
Okay.
But at a certain point, I was like, oh no, I have wasted too much time trying to defeat her, and I lost like two or three characters went unsighted while I was trying to defeat her.
Oh no.
But I came back later, and the reward for it is worth it. But there was definitely that like sunk cost fallacy going on there, where I was just like, I lost 3 people trying to defeat you, and I know that I can do it. I just can't figure out how. And so that was probably the biggest decision that I made that kind of bit me in the ass a little bit for a while. But
so this kind of goes into this area of like side activities almost that are offered in the game. Like, do you want to get off the main path to do this thing on the side? But I couldn't fight M because I went and talked to M and did the whole thing where like you choose a character to sacrifice and then you get their hours left added onto Alma. And I knew that fighting M was an option, that you could like choose to sacrifice M, and that's how you get to the fight with M, right?
Yeah.
If you choose to sacrifice someone who isn't M first, which I did with like a merchant I didn't care about that I wasn't ever going to talk to again.
Yeah.
And I was getting like another 150 hours. So I was like, okay, sounds cool. Once you pick another NPC, you cannot choose to sacrifice M.
Is that right?
Did you know that?
I didn't know that, but I had a feeling it was like, once you go down this path, there's no, I felt it in my soul. It was like, don't do it.
Yours was intuition, but mine, I wasn't even thinking about it. You know, I just chose this thing. And then I was reading about that trophy of defeating M. I wanted to go back, and not being able to fight M locks you out of a ton of extra content. Actually, I think you need something M gives you to go do extra activities outside the main game.
Ooh, I only noticed one more thing that M had something to do with.
Yeah, so I think
there might be
I think
more.
it has to do with a secret ending or something, or a secret boss.
Yes. I saw secret ending stuff.
And so I am forever locked out of that. And that felt a little cheap for me, where it's like, oh, I didn't choose M. I chose this merchant like an idiot.
You
I was an idiot.
you gotta protect everybody, Bopo. You
It's
gotta
just
keep
like-
everybody alive.
I wish there was that warning though, So anyway, how time affected me was, I was stressed out, and I think that was an intent of Studio Pixel Punk. They want me to feel the tension. And I think I got a fair amount of that. It's just that I wanted to make sure I could finish the game. I wanted that safety, so I did turn on Explorer mode. Do you know what happened? Does Alma actually die and become unsighted if she runs out of time?
I don't know. I might turn on the game later to see what happens,
Just
but
let that clock run.
I'm sure it just is like a game over. Hopefully it doesn't like wipe your save or something, but
That's what I'm curious about.
Yeah.
Because I don't know.
I didn't let it happen. I think I only had to give myself 2 or 3 meteor dust to feel like I was okay
Okay.
to get to the end of the game.
Okay. Are there other side activities that you felt like were really important or that really took you away from the main path?
Man, mostly just mostly just fighting M.
Mostly that? Okay.
But progressing through certain levels, just were really difficult for me. Like I had a lot of trouble in the factory zone. That took me a long time. I had to look up some stuff for that one.
Yeah, that's the one where you have all the lava, you have the Haley bot that
Yeah.
you're getting in to traverse, and it's a lot of you have to activate something while something else is activated.
Yeah.
And that one tripped me up quite a long time.
And then highway took me a little while. I also forgot that you could climb vines when you're in the game, and that's pretty
Yeah.
much the one task you have to do in the highway zone to get to the end. But
they kind of blend in.
yeah. And then I would have loved to have found all the dogs, but it wasn't a focus of mine because of the time. So I've only found 2 of them, and I think there's like 5, and there might even be a cat, I think.
I saw in a video that someone had a cat, and I don't know where that comes from. It could be part of the bonus content. But I found all 4 dogs. And I got to maximum relationship with a dog.
Yeah, I think I got 1 extra heart for one of the dogs, but I don't know. I kind of sent them back to camp, and it was just like, I just got to get to the end because there's so many automatons I want to save.
Yes.
Which ultimately I didn't save. But
Well, okay. So on that topic, I'm finding the dogs. One of my first priorities with spending time with characters or giving, resources to characters was I found my first dog. I named it Atticus after my dog at home. And I got it to max relationship status. And in order to do that, you sometimes need to let the dog nap for 3 hours, and it takes away 3
yeah.
in-game hours.
Okay, yeah.
And so that was a nice little risk thing, but I liked maxing it out. I got a trophy for it. I didn't do that with any other dogs. But then other than the dog, I mentioned this already, but I gave Iris tons of meteor dust, so that I got maximum hearts with Iris. I wanted the commentary from Iris as well as the combat assistance for as long as possible. And Iris also mentions a lost sibling that they want to find. And it would have broken my heart to not be able to find that. And so I ended up being able to find that area of the game because I turned on Explorer mode.
Oh, that's so great.
Yeah.
I didn't get to experience that. Iris was one of the ones I lost trying to take down M. I really wanted to keep Vanna and her little robot assistant alive.
Yeah.
And I lost them before I could really even explore those relationships.
Oh, shoot. Was that BB-42?
Yeah.
The one who upgrades your weapons?
Yeah. Those 2 specifically I wanted to keep alive, but I didn't have the dust when it was their time.
Mhm.
So that was
Oh.
unfortunate.
That's so sad. Another one that I liked getting the bonus from was Eliza, who is a former research assistant for Dr. Zephyrina. And this is the person where you can get more permanent syringes. But the bonus for getting up to maximum hearts for Eliza is you get an auto syringe chip,
Okay.
which charges the syringe automatically.
Oh, that sounds so nice.
And I loved that. It's basically like I can heal now as long as I don't get hit too often. My syringes will charge really fast. And I was coupling that with the syringe chip, and paired together, the auto syringe fills your syringe. The syringe chip takes any source of charge for your syringe and charges it faster. And so when you use those two chips,
Ooh,
you fill up a healing item in seconds.
that's so great.
Yeah, it takes up a lot of your chip slots, but like it took a
Worth it?
lot of worry away. Worth it. Worth it 100%. Yeah. What are some of your favorite weapons and chips and cogs you're using in this game? There are so many options.
Yeah.
DiscoCola.
To be honest, I didn't explore weapons too much.
Okay.
I got the sword and I kept the sword the whole time pretty much. I did use Raquel's axe a lot once I got it.
Nice. And that's an optional.
Yes.
Yeah.
I did use that a lot, especially against like bosses, just to completely kill them with like a lot of damage. But beyond that, I didn't explore too much. I didn't use any of the elemental weapons except for the ice grenade launcher, which you need at a certain point to traverse, unless you're really skilled with the top, apparently.
Yeah.
Um,
Or if you get the ice shuriken, you can just throw that over the water and it makes a bridge, basically.
oh, is that right?
Yeah, you didn't do that?
I didn't.
I was doing that constantly at
that
the end
would
of
have been nice.
Yeah.
So that's on me for not exploring. But yeah, I didn't use too many different weapons. I really like the sword. The sword
Yeah.
does it for me.
Yeah.
If I was looking for a Hyperlight Drifter game, and that's what that sword is,
There you
essentially.
go. It's fast. That's why I like swords. I'm using the sword and the doctor's pistol.
Is the
which-
Doctor's Pistol good? I didn't ever equip
It's
it.
good. I think that's what you get for getting full hearts with Vanna.
Okay.
I
I did get it, but I didn't
okay.
use it.
Yeah, so it's one of those people in that building with Vanna, I think. But yeah, it's powerful. I upgraded it. It has a lot of bullets. It has a lot of bullets in the chamber, so you don't have to reload it as often. And I was just using that to quickly dispatch enemies who had a few hits left, to get the upper hand on those moments that you mentioned where
Mhm.
you've got 3 smaller enemies swarming you. So that's where I was using it. And then I got Raquel's axe. It was really powerful, but I found the axe to be so slow and I was just so bad at the combat that I needed that faster sword.
Yeah, I only used it after a successful parry.
Right.
No other moments
And
in
in
the
that
game.
moment, it is very powerful. And you can use certain chips like the Parry Master chip, which will increase your follow-up attack to a parry by a ton. And so that's a great combination too, especially if you have the quick attack chip also. So you're attacking fast and your parry attacks are really awesome. And then speaking of Raquel's axe, I just want to point out that Raquel is a really dynamic secondary character and reminds me of characters from other games where you're looking for somebody, but I think Raquel adds more to this story. So Raquel is absent from much of the game, right? So
Mhm.
doesn't seem like she can add to this experience. So it's this person you're looking to save. You could argue she's like the Princess Peach of this game, or the Princess Zelda, or whatever, of Unsighted. But ends up being really dynamic because you learn about Raquel through those flashbacks. And the flashbacks happen mostly after you get a meteor shard. And so they're spaced out and you don't get this exposition dump all at once, which is nice. But you see the evolution of her relationship to Alma, and it's very interesting where Raquel came first, was built first, and Alma's sort of like the successor
Mhm.
robot.
New model. Yeah.
And they're both like combat focused, and Alma's supposed to be better. And you see that tension, you see that like conflict of like, I know you're supposed to be better than me, but you're the newbie, so you have to listen to me. But then also seeing them fall in love and having a great moment at the end as well. I thought that was just unexpectedly really deep for that relationship to have that arc. And you don't see that kind of arc too often, especially with robots.
Yeah.
So I like the impact that Raquel had on the story, especially there at the end. DiscoCola, I want to give you the final word. what else needs to be said about Unsighted before we become Unsighted?
Before we become Unsighted, give me a couple hours. I'll think of the answer.
I'll get you a meteor dust here, so you can have 24 more hours.
No, I highly recommend this game if you are a fan of Hyperlight Drifter. A game that I adore and love to this day. Check this game out. I think it'll scratch a lot of what you're missing out on. I've heard a lot of people compare it to Crosscode, which is a game I haven't played, and visually I think is not a great comparison.
Mm-hmm. That's on our master list.
It is on our master list. So I don't know. Crosscode fans seem to think it's similar.
Okay.
Check that out. But yeah, I think it's a great game. If this like time mechanic sounds daunting, I don't feel ashamed or afraid to turn on Explorer mode. I think it would be worth it to just play the game in Explorer mode. And I'm going to do that myself too the next time I play.
Yeah, before I started playing, I was daunted by the idea of this game, and that made me a little unmotivated, but I back you up on that, where I think any kind of player, whether you're more about the harder experience or the more approachable experience, I think everybody can find enjoyment in this game in some way, especially if you're just a fan of adventure Metroidvania games. So that is our review of Unsighted. You can play it on PC, Nintendo Switch, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and Xbox Series X and S. DiscoCola rated it a 9. I rated it an 8. That's the end of this episode of Underplayed. You can find more of our episodes at kzum.org/underplayed and on common podcast services like Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Our music was composed by Jack Rodenberg. Our art comes from Onimochi. Underplayed is on Twitter and Instagram at UnderplayedPod. You can find me on Twitter at Bopo. That's BO_PO, and check out that same handle on the GG app where you can see my game lists and what I'm currently playing.
And I am at DiscoCola on Twitter, Twitch, and the GG app, and I will be putting both of these games in my top 100 list after the show.
Wow.
And check out Underplayed on Twitch as well. Underplayed podcast. Bopo and I will be streaming co-op games as often as we can.
Yes, which isn't as often as we want to, but it will happen. Next time, we'll have 2 more secret games to review, and our featured game will be Limbo, a puzzle platformer developed by Playdead. Until then, everyone, keep on playing.